Opeth just dropped. I'm not sure when this video will publish, but it was yesterday as of me recording this right now. I've been waiting for this for a while. I've been excited for it for a while. And you know, for the last decade or so, maybe a little bit longer, there's kind of been this divided feeling between Opeth fans. You see, you have old Peth and new Peth, and never the two Peths shall cross. The old stuff was definitely more death metal inspired with very heavy growls, and then the last 4 albums have been pretty on the nose as far as old Northern European prog. I mean, a little bit wonkier and darker than that stuff usually was, but still, like, it's very, very proggy, kind of jammy, tape saturation heavy kind of production style. This new track, I have a lot to say about. We'll see how much of it I actually remember to say. But let's dive into it. I believe the two Peths have actually crossed this time. All right, what have you brought to us today, boys? What do we got? I think this subsection 1. I don't know. Not sure how to pronounce this title, but the radio edit part is hilarious. Okay, we've got wood steps. Sounds like old dress shoes walking on either marble or hardwood. I can hear the gross, disgusting spring on that friggin' storm door. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's a little more mid-range forward of a bass tone than what they normally go for. It could also be the fact that he went up in the upper register first. Love the bass tone. And we're introducing the theme on whatever keys patch he's using. Okay, instantly love the drums. Sorry, everyone's gonna get so mad at me for pausing constantly. I just have so much to say. These drums are super punchy. They're very dry. They're very tight. I think I can catch a hint of a room sound in there, but not much. One of the things I'm noticing is even though the drums are dry and darker than what you would expect for modern metal, they're still very clear. There's a clarity on this drum production that was not here on probably the last 4 albums at all. There's a nice whisper of a high end in these drums. It is pissed! Dude, that riff writing is sick. Instantly, this sounds like the two Peths have crossed. The composition style definitely comes more from like an Incauda Venenum, or I would even say like Pale Communion style, where it's kind of dorky and off, this really weird exotic scale that does not like being diatonic whatsoever. But then we have the old school, mid-range forward, clearer, kind of more saturated and less woolly kind of distortion on the guitars. There's a lot more clarity on this record like there was during like the Steven Wilson and Jens Bogren era, as far as all of the mixing and production goes, versus, like I said, in their prog rock era, where things feel maybe a smidge muddier or darker or more like low mids centered. This gets me excited, but that theme is a little eerie and weird, and then that riffage is just The first time I heard the theme, I was like, eh. But now, like, the next few times, it's been pretty freaking nasty. It's so nasty, dude. Okay, I'm listening to that snare. That snare is super duper forward. It's punching the crap out of it. I don't think there's a reverb to be found on it. Probably a room mic from what I can tell. There is a room mic in there, or like if there is a reverb applied, it's super duper short. These drums are bone dry and also not a lot of compression. There's some compression happening, but not a lot. Like, let's take a look at some of their previous work. If we listen here to Ghost to Perdition, listen to these drums. You got that classic metal sound where it's kind of like a pillowy woof, a little bit of a punch with like the typewriter sound on top of it. Jens Bogren is very much into his like pillowy compression style, which, I mean, like that's shaped so many of the great metal records of our time. Listen to that snare drum. It feels like there's not quite as much body, almost like they're further away. There's definitely more of a drum verb thing happening there. Now listen to how bone dry and in your face these drums are. Just dirt bone dry, super duper dry, in your face. The kick is quite dark for metal standards, but just all punch, all kick, if you know what I mean. Frankly, considering how over-processed everything is today, guilty as charged. It's a very bold choice in my opinion. And like, you can hear the compression acting as like a really substantial transient shaper in this Ghost Reveries mix, whereas this compression definitely does some tone shaping. I think it is definitely embellishing the resonance and the sustain and release of these shells, but it's almost certainly not doing a ton to exaggerating the transients. It's just kind of trying to keep everything a little bit more consistent so that it's hitting you directly in the face the entire time. Drum performance, as long as this hasn't been like ridiculously edited, which I mean, only they know, drum performance is killer. This sounds and feels like a real drummer in a room. I actually love that kind of spastic energy where you can pick up the little inconsistencies in the performance. It feels like a living, breathing person, not just a drum machine. Then yeah, let's just indulge in this riff one more time. This riff is nasty. So you get the ba-da-ba-dum-bum. So we're back to, it's either drop D or D standard. I don't know what they tuned to, but we're back to D as our tonic, as our pedal tone in this case. We're going to na-na, which is kind of, which I believe is diminished. It's either diminished or augmented. I'm fairly certain it's diminished. They're doing na-na, na-na, back and forth on that groovin' pedal tone in D. And then you have this nasty, verb-heavy, pitch wheel bending keyboard in the background going along with them. Like, this is like 100% vibing with me right now. This is doing the things that I really enjoy. This section right here to me is like a perfect distillation of like, okay, there's gonna be some Incauda Venenum in this, but we're almost like pulling back to Ghost Reveries. I really want to say Ghost Reveries. Another theme, no pitch correction. Sounds like Michael's been listening to some power metal with that freaking vibrato. Dear Lord. Got a good step and a half with that. Dang. At least as far as I can remember, I have not heard such a dramatic vibrato come out of Michael. The growls are back! I'd like, frankly, I mean, yeah, does it fit? Yes, it fits incredibly well. It's super dark. It's grunged and aged like this album cover. It fits the aesthetic very well. These may be the coolest and most cartoonish growls I've heard from him. Again, maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. Maybe he's been doing the same thing forever. And it could just very well be how it's mixed, because with different compression and EQ settings, you can exaggerate or get rid of much of the nuance of the timbre of a performance. Yeah, that riff pulls me right in, and then we're having this different kind of rhythmic accentuation with the vocal on top now, as opposed to where we were previously in the intro, I suppose. Yeah, and I guess, spoiler alert, the song structure on this is just like not even a thing. It has some parts and themes that repeat for sure, but it's like, you tell me to give names to these, it'd be like a part A prime, I don't know. I just realized I'm hearing a really strong mid-range brang, like overtones, almost single coily or like old school Gibson kind of thing, which I know sound substantially different, but they have this old school quality to it. I'm hearing that specifically in the right channel. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's like classic Gibson style. 3K to 6K ping that has this like really smooth, nice curve over top of it. I really like these drum parts. They feel kind of random and spastic, but I think with that dry drum production, it works incredibly well. If these were, again, more compressed with this big, like, verby sound, they're trying to, like, the subwoofer the entire time, I feel like maybe it would be a little bit too much, a little bit too awkward, but given how, again, dark and pissed this is, and the fact that they're bone dry, so they're just punching really hard, and you can feel the velocity differences between each hit. I'm like, okay, yeah, this actually works super well. I will say the last riff, not my favorite. Yet another theme to introduce. Okay, so it's like, you know, common Opeth moment. We just went through all of this really cool momentum building area where we have this really cool, definable riff that's like a little bit awkward, a little bit dark, but quickly digestible, gives you that little adrenaline boost. And then let's just discard that for a random keyboard solo moment. That part specifically reminds me of like the intro to the keyboard riff on Charlatan a little bit. It's even a similar kind of tone. Okay, you hear that little na-na, little harmonized upper register guitars, almost like Boston-esque. I don't think I've ever heard that on an Opeth record that I can remember. Like, that, again, new things happening. Okay. Listening here, before it seems like they were a lot more like on old Peth style stuff. It seems like their guitar tone and bass tone, while they were, you know, drastically different, really married super duper well to the point where many people would not know where the guitar tone ended and the bass tone began. Here, I can hear a much more distinct separation between the two of them, which again, for metal, is a very bold choice. Maybe it's just the arrangement at this part specifically, which, by the way, just as a blanket statement, the arrangement for this entire song is absolutely nasty. I love it so much. There's so much energy. As far as the composition in this song, there's things I enjoy, and then with much of Opeth's catalog, there's things I'm like, why did you do that? Now, knowing what my experience was with In Cauda Venenum, which was me going into this hoping that I was going to get like a classic Opeth record, even though I should have known better by now. And then years later, coming back to that record and being like, oh, no, it's not like an album you can pick out one song and just like vibe on. It is an entire record experience that needs to be treated as such. I'm approaching this song that way. On its own, I'm like, okay, it's got some serious bitchin' energy. It basically tells us what we need to know, which is this is old Peth and new Peth come together in ultimate Peth. It tells us that we're probably going to be getting some composition like In Cauda Venenum, but it also tells us that we're going to be getting some arranging and production style closer to something like Ghost Reveries, but with that more human, dry, classic aspect. Less compression, more dynamic range everywhere. And a band has to put out a single, so they have to pick something, right? But knowing what I know about the last album, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wait for the entire album to come out. I'm going to have to listen to this album at least 3 or 4 times to really pick up on the vibe. Especially with 2 discs. I believe this is a double disc album. Like, holy crap. Love that vocal harmony, that flat 7 with the hitting your classic dominant. It's very Dream Theater-y. not laugh at this part? Come on, it's so weird. This is where I'm fairly certain he's playing a character. I don't know what character. I have no freaking idea, but that's the only thing I can think of. Like, come on, it makes me laugh. Come on. It's emotionally effective. Frederick Atkinson. That was more of a personality piece than a traditional solo, I would say. Then we're back to the original riff, and then we take it on out. Okay. In the interest of time and using as little of their copyrighted material as possible, I think I'm going to end that there, but I have some thoughts. So based upon that old kind of grunged, aged, haunted look that we have for all of the aesthetics of this upcoming album, and the fact that we have like a bunch of old-timey people sitting in a room with like early 20th century dress, I would say, like I mentioned already, this album is going to have things that are familiar to Opeth, like growls and similar kind of production style, but we're going to have composition that is more in line with Encaudavenom, and if I had to guess, probably also the way that the album is constructed is going to be very similar. Michael Ackerfeld himself has said that this album is not going to be that like immediate rush. You're not going to be able to sink your teeth into it immediately like you may have on older Opeth records, which seems to be a trend in this latest phase of Opeth. So I do expect I'm gonna have to sit down with this multiple times, really give it a chance to sink in, actually be able to pick up where the themes are recurring throughout the record, how they've developed somewhat throughout the record. I can tell you, hands down, of the last 5 albums, including this one, I would say this is my favorite production and mix they've had, and I'm very curious to see where the rest of this album goes, because even though it's not as like commercially appealing as some of their Steven Wilson, Jens Bogren era stuff, I feel like on a mix to mix and production to production level, it's probably going to be able to punch with them. So much metal across multiple different subgenres is quite by the numbers when it comes to production style, and maybe you get a little bit of personality tweak here or there, and that mostly comes down to the preferences and tastes of the players and not so much an intentional artistic vision. And I have noticed so much with Opeth albums, especially these last few proggy ones, that they go into it with a sound design in mind, with bold choices. Now, I would say that these choices aren't quite as bold as, say, Encaudavenom or Sorceress. Sorceress, very, very bold timbre choices that I think did not pay off. But I respect them for at least trying. Like, that was very bold to have that just really low-end, overly exaggerated stuff. This is kind of like, remember this old Opeth stuff that you love and secretly we kind of love too? Now let's recontextualize that with these bone dry drums that I'm fairly certain the casual listener is not even going to pick up on. They're going to have zero idea that that's what's going on. Just going to be like, I like that guitar tone. Oh, it's like the chunga 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 chunga. Oh, just remind me of old Peth. Oh, it have growls. It's like, God bless you. I'm happy. If that makes you happy, I'm so happy. But much like the lead single off of Encaudavenom, that was not a holistic look at the entire record. Not to mention, a radio edit could also mean a radio mix as well. So I'm going to reserve my judgment, obviously, until the rest of this comes out. So far, I'm really liking that mix. This has me very optimistic for this album. I think it's gonna be a weird one. I don't know if I'm gonna love it or not, but I'm at very least gonna respect it for sure. And fairly certain there's gonna be multiple moments where I'm gonna be like, yes, up the irons, boy! Based upon what I heard here and what we have for precedent of Opeth in the past, I am excited and thinking I'm going to enjoy this more probably than the last 4 records. But we'll see. I've really grown to love Encaudavenom a lot. Like, I'm starting to be able to say, you know what? What if we put those against some of their greatest ones from that old Peth era? Anyway, those aren't even all my thoughts, but that's all I'm going to share for now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'd love to know what you guys think. I'm stoked on it. And yeah, support me on Night School if you want to see more cool videos like this. Also, go pre-order their album. I'll have a link to their pre-order page in the description. Support the art that you love. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Love you. Bye.